So the decentering men conversation seems to be circling a drain, and I'm not saying that in like a bad or insulting way. I'm saying that in the way of like we are getting ready to come out the other side of the drain into the actual ocean of truth. And that's because the question at hand is really much, much bigger than feminism versus the patriarchy. Feminism is an intersectional movement because it's affected by other things other than just the patriarchy. Choice feminism, like a lot of the reason why not all women can get on board with the purest, most exclusive version of feminism in which women don't wear makeup or don't have cosmetic procedures done or don't dye their hair when it starts turning gray, or maybe don't deal with men, which to me, none of those things are feminism or not feminism per se. Once again, because oftentimes they have nothing to do with feminism. They have to do more with access to money, power, and access to oppressive systems that are ingrained in our society. We know that a lot of women would love to just let their hair go gray, not have to go to the gym every day to stay in a certain kind of shape, etc. But we also viscerally realize how invisible we become to both men and women when we don't take care of our appearance, when we don't wear the makeup, when we don't dye our hair, when we don't go to the gym. A lot of women and men actually talk about how it makes them invisible to everybody in society. And that's because not all of these things have to do with feminism per se. Historically, men have also worn makeup and wigs. It's more about presentation, and that has a lot more to do with ableism and even racism, and more so just capitalism, because that is what sells, like beauty, good looks, youth, all of that sells. And those can be feminist issues, but again, there would be nothing to sell. There would be no incentive if capitalism were not overlaid the top of that. This is a chance for us to sort of think bigger than the decentering men conversation. It's also very important for us to realize what kind of things uphold the resistance to feminism as we know it. The other part of it is that because we have been having the it's all men conversation for so long, we now have to sort of deal with the repercussions of that, which have been that women have now started taking that literally. The bigger conversation of that comes down to bioessentialism. And that conversation really lacks intersectionality because it's not all women either. Not all women are good. A lot of women support the patriarchy, and not just by wearing makeup or dyeing their hair or having a boyfriend, but literally like by voting against women's rights and by saying that feminism was a mistake and by saying that women don't need rights, men will just take care of us and we'll be okay. And unless we kind of figure out what that's really about, we run the risk of not only that conversation, once again, like centering men and putting the blame on women, but it's also going to lack any avenues of proper accountability for women. Because once again, it turns into this bioessentialist thing where it's like women are good and men are bad. And that's not really what we're dealing with. Again, we're dealing with things overlaid on top of those things. So like 50% of white women voted for Donald Trump. They voted against their own rights because they know they're going to be shielded by white supremacy. We also need to be able to talk about not just racist women, but also narcissistic women, because we're not having the larger conversation about how the patriarchy encourages narcissism and psychopathy. Whether you're a man or a woman, you can get to the top of that system very cynically just by being a narcissist or a psychopath. A lot of us are not ready for that larger conversation that there are many narcissistic women out there. So they sort of choose to have this cynical, dark triad oriented approach to the world that we live in. And it's like, yeah, that's why a lot of us have trouble making friends, because we're not having that bigger conversation after we have the decentering men conversation. What all of these systems have in common is that they are draining to people's life force, because they're primarily comprised of toxic people that are willing to have something at the expense of others, right? That's all of these systems. That's racism, capitalism, ableism, transphobia, homophobia, and of course the patriarchy. All of these systems depend on somebody having something nice at the expense of somebody else. This is very well illustrated in the film Us by Jordan Peele. If you watch that film with that lens of like everything comes at the expense of somebody else and one day it's going to be time to pay that piper, this whole conversation will make sense in that context. Because what's really happening is this bigger split, right? The split is not between men and women. The split is not between gay people and straight people. The split is not between able-bodied people and disabled people. The split really is between selfishness versus cooperation. It's service to self versus service to others. One of these things is going to lead us towards actual prosperity and actual abundance. And one of those things is surely going to lead to death. There's no other way to say it. Like, it's just going to be death, suffering, etc. That's kind of part of like that bigger conversation that includes everybody and that includes all the systems of oppression being able to be toppled at once. Very, very important, because as long as we keep thinking of these systems as they are one versus the other, in the sense of like judging a book by its cover, not only will the fight continue to be like short-sighted and ineffective, but it will also ensure that those systems stay in place. Because it's not even that you're fighting for the rights of other people, it's that you really are fighting for your own interests down the line. The oppressive systems win when we don't know that. And when we get stuck in these conversations at the impasse of, well, this is a fight between these people and these people based on their external characteristics. What we need to focus on is like, what is your internal characteristics? Are you willing to have things at the expense of others, or are you willing to fight against that as a culture? And then the other side of it would be, are you just looking out for number one? Are you just looking to amass, hoard, and gain wealth, resources, control, etc.? Like, that's really the fight we're having. I'm glad. I really do think it's becoming a lot more clear in our culture, where we're like questioning, like, well, what's up with women billionaires? Why are we excusing that just because they're women, right? Why are we excusing male-centeredness just because somebody's a woman? All of those conversations are important because it's helping us to distill it down to the actual characteristics that we're fighting for, which is justice, cooperation, empathy, equality. Anyways, this is a much bigger conversation that I'm sure we will continue to have, but please let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree or disagree. And as always, stay safe out there. I love you so much. Godspeed.